The Texas Rangers were not just keepers of the peace, they were key players in the expansion of the state. With law and order still being shaped, their word often stood as the final authority across vast, lawless lands. This image, taken in a simple room, transports us to a time when justice came from the barrel of a gun. Feared and respected, they became symbols of a wild frontier. In their legacy, fact and legend walk side by side in the story of the Old West. Inside a modest room with worn objects and walls that had seen it all, two women faced the camera with confidence and a hint of defiance. This was Alaska in 1890, a land shaped by gold fever, rough terrain, and desperate choices. Brothels offered more than company. They became shelter, income, and often the only path available for many women. Dressed in nightgowns and stockings, they pose not with shame, but with strength. In their gaze, we find a quiet resistance and a story that demands to be remembered. From the top of a hill, a native man wrapped in a traditional blanket gazes into the distance, watching the river wind through the valley. Beside him, the railroad cuts through the land like a deep scar. It's the 19th century, and the Transcontinental Railway is reshaping the nation. With it came trade and movement, but also the uprooting of entire cultures. In his silence, we witness the quiet grief of a world being pushed aside in the name of progress. In a scene suspended between time and memory, the Grand Canyon stands in all its glory in 1873. Towering rock columns rise like ancient guardians, holding the echoes of indigenous peoples who called this land home long before explorers arrived. Their presence doesn't shout. It whispers through stone and wind. Among the vast cliffs, human figures appear small, yet full of meaning. They are living echoes of a deep spiritual bond with the land that shaped them. In the golden light of the desert, riders move in a line across the calm bed of the Rio Grande. Their shadows stretch at their feet, while stone cliffs bear silent witness. It is 1904, and this journey means more than distance. It's a symbol of resilience. With every hoofbeat, they hold tight to their heritage. In a world of change and loss, they ride with purpose, grounded in the strength of their roots. With stern faces and rifles in hand, this group of men stands as the legendary Texas Rangers, relentless guardians of the untamed West. Their image commands respect, a symbol of law in a land ruled by chaos. Formed as a patrol force in early Texas, they came to represent both protection for settlers and brutal force against those seen as obstacles to expansion. For some, they were heroes. For others, a reminder of violence disguised as justice. In a desert village built from adobe, a modest church rises, humble in form, yet rich in meaning. It stands as a witness to the cultural merging between native peoples and European settlers. In front of it, children and adults pose calmly, their presence a quiet declaration of survival. Built on land once home to the Zuni, this church marks the crossroads of two worlds, not erasure, but adaptation, a living echo of identity that endures. Amid the chaos of a military camp, a group of soldiers stages a mock fight that feels more like a play than a battle. Wielding chairs, barrels, and cooking utensils, they turn war into absurd theater. But behind the laughter lies something deeper, the need to cope with pain. It was the American Civil War, and these men found in humor a momentary escape. This photo reminds us that even in the darkest times, human creativity finds a way to breathe. Surrounded by hunting trophies, mounted antlers, and carefully arranged weapons, a man grips his rifle and stares straight into the lens. It's 1871, and this is more than just a portrait of a hunter. It's the making of a myth. William Frederick Cody, later known as Buffalo Bill, stages himself as the hero of his own legend. The deer skulls, the pistols, the confident pose, all part of a crafted image. This is where the show begins. Seated proudly on a richly adorned horse and dressed in garments that blend elegance with frontier daring, Buffalo Bill poses as a living symbol of an era. More than a cowboy, he was a performer, a storyteller who turned the conquest of the West into a traveling stage. Through his famous Wild West show, he brought thousands a dramatized vision of the frontier. In every performance, myth and reality danced together. He didn't just live history, he sold it. Under a dusty, open sky, the main street of Manhattan, a mining town in Nevada, bustles with life in the early years of the 20th century. Men in hats and vests gather outside wooden storefronts, offering everything from medicine to mining tools. The signs above each business are bold and ornate, trying to give a sense of permanence to a town born of dust and ambition. Here, gold fever wears the face of everyday life, and survival is carved into the wood of every wall. In front of a wooden cabin and beneath the bare branches of a tree, 3 young men pose with croquet mallets in hand, while a woman watches from afar. At the center stands Billy the Kid, not as an outlaw, but as a playful youth caught in a quiet moment. It's a rare glimpse of simplicity in a life later consumed by chaos. This photo reminds us that even legends had days of laughter and normalcy. Before the gunfire, there was stillness, and someone simply being young. Amid rolling hills and open countryside, 7 children cheerfully ride atop a cow, making their unconventional way to school. It's 1907, and this charming scene tells more than a story. It speaks of resourcefulness and joy in rural life. The cow, usually a symbol of farm labor and sustenance, takes on a new role here, that of a school bus. In the heart of the Old West, creativity bridged the distance, and sometimes the ride was half the fun. By the late 19th century, the Hatfields had become infamous for their brutal feud with the McCoys, a neighboring family from Kentucky. What began as a land dispute and personal slights soon turned into a violent saga that claimed many lives and captured national attention. This photograph is more than a historical record. It's a glimpse into a time when family honor was guarded with bullets. In these faces, we see the legacy of vengeance and the cost of a name.
Who would have imagined that during the American Civil War, a Union soldier would take a moment to make a funny face for the camera? Taken in 1863, this photo stands out from the usual stiffness of the era's portraits. Dressed in a neatly buttoned uniform, the man opens his hands and pulls a mocking expression as if daring the war itself to steal his spirit. It's a brief, joyful pause in a time of pain, a reminder that even amid war, humor could still survive.
With serious faces and dressed in Old West attire, 5 young men pose with the unsettling calm of those who know their fate is sealed. They are the feared Rufus Buck Gang, outlaws who spread chaos across the native territories of the American Southwest. Led by Rufus Buck himself, the gang carried out a string of violent crimes that shocked the nation. This photograph captures more than defiance. It reflects the final stillness before judgment. In their eyes, a legacy of blood and rebellion. Across a vast plain that stretches into the sky, a cowboy sits quietly beside his horse, watching the distant herd. He speaks no words and seeks no audience. His presence alone captures the soul of the Wild West. Formed by dust, leather, and quiet resolve, the lone cowboy became more than a worker. He became a legend. In the 18th and 19th centuries, he was the heartbeat of the great cattle trails across the American Southwest, a silent icon in an untamed land. In a dusty corner of the American Old West, a wooden structure rises as a silent witness to a harsh and complicated era. From the upper balcony, women gaze out with a mix of strength and quiet resignation. Below, men go about their day, part of the daily bustle of frontier life. What we see is the front of an old brothel, one of many places where the forbidden and the essential lived under the same roof, a hidden world yet deeply woven into the fabric of the West. Across an open prairie, a group of riders moves calmly past a row of teepees. Among them stands a figure believed to be Petalasharo, leading his people with quiet strength and purpose. In moments like this, leadership meant more than military command. It was the heart of social and spiritual continuity. The survival of the tribe depended on unity. Every step taken reflected a deep-rooted connection to the land, the ancestors, and the Pawnee way of life. In the heart of the desert, two worlds sit face to face. Apaches and U.S. soldiers share the same ground, but not the same future. Geronimo and General Crook engage in a conversation heavy with tension, mutual respect, and reluctant understanding. This meeting marked a turning point in the final stages of Apache resistance. More than a truce, this photograph captures the uneasy bond between former enemies and the struggle to find coexistence after years of war. With steady eyes and bare feet planted on dry earth, 4 Chinese men stand before stacked sacks and a rustic wooden structure. They represent the thousands who came from southern China, driven by the hope of opportunity. What awaited them was backbreaking labor, daily risk, and widespread discrimination. This image captures their quiet strength. Often forgotten, their hands helped build the Transcontinental Railroad, a feat that reshaped a nation. Deep within a mine tunnel carved by sweat and explosives, a group of men pauses for a brief rest. Seated on damp stones or makeshift planks, they eat quietly, their faces coated in dust, their clothes soaked with mud and labor. The air is thick with moisture, and danger hides in every shadow. Yet in that short moment, a lunch tin, a flickering lamp, and a shared word between comrades were enough. This was life beneath the surface, harsh, silent, and deeply human. In the shadow of a towering rock formation in Arizona's arid land, a group of miners stands before a wooden framework marking the mine's entrance. It's 1883, and what we see isn't just rough engineering. It's a monument to human effort against the vastness of nature. The stone looms above, as if ready to swallow the fragile structure whole. And yet, the men remain steady, symbols of endurance carved into the desert. This is where grit met the earth. In front of a makeshift cabin built from logs and earth, a group of miners pauses after an exhausting day's work. It's Colorado around 1890, in the heart of the gold rush boom. With tools in hand, dust-covered boots, and faces weathered by cold and labor, these men embody the spirit of an era. The promise of wealth drove thousands into untamed lands like this. And in every stare, there's a story of sacrifice, grit, and the hope for something more. In the second image, Roy Bean stands in front of his iconic establishment, the Jersey Lily, surrounded by townsfolk, even a young girl on a bicycle. This building served both as a saloon and a courtroom, becoming a central hub in the community. Bean enforced his own brand of justice, often ignoring formal codes in favor of practicality. His reputation grew not because he followed the rules, but because he embodied frontier law in its rawest form. A saloon keeper, a judge, and a legend of the West. Dust rises as a calf struggles beneath the firm hands of seasoned cowboys. Out on the wide plains of Montana, the branding ritual begins, a time-honored tradition at the heart of ranch life. Each cowboy moves with practiced precision. One restrains, the other lowers the hot iron. The sharp hiss speaks louder than ownership. It echoes a lifestyle passed down through generations. In this fleeting moment, toughness, skill, and legacy all meet in the rhythm of the working West. In the grassy center of Fort Washakie, Wyoming, the Shoshone gather with quiet strength. It's 1892, and under the watchful eyes of soldiers and settlers, a ceremonial dance begins. Adorned in tradition, they move to rhythms older than the fort's foundations, singing stories of endurance and identity. Though bound by reservation lines, their spirit moves freely. This is not mere performance. It is survival in motion, a sacred defiance etched into every step. Beneath Arizona's unforgiving sun, Apache men and women work beside soldiers and horses, delivering hay to American settlers in the year 1893. What appears to be a simple task holds a deeper truth, one of forced adaptation, quiet endurance, and unspoken resistance. Once free across this land, the Apache now found themselves woven into a system not of their making. Each bundle of hay was more than labor. It marked a turning point where autonomy faded into roles imposed by a changing world. In the dusty heart of Langtry, Texas, Judge Roy Bean dispensed justice with whiskey in hand and a wink in his eye. By 1900, his saloon was also a courtroom, where rulings came fast and the beer flowed freely. The modest wooden shack boldly claimed to be the law west of the Pecos, drawing in drifters, outlaws, and locals alike. Here, verdicts were dealt between poker hands, and Bean's word outranked any official code. It was justice, frontier style. Wrapped in blankets and cloaked in silence, Cheyenne leaders sat with solemn dignity on the steps of the county jail in Dodge City. The year was 1878. Captured while trying to return to their sacred Black Hills homeland, they had escaped the confines of an Oklahoma reservation. This photograph captures more than defeat. It holds a quiet defiance. These were not merely prisoners, but powerful symbols of a people's unbroken will to reclaim their land, their identity, and their freedom. Wagon wheels clattered through the waters of the Gila River, heavy with purpose and resolve. Near San Carlos, Arizona, in 1885, U.S. Army troops pushed westward, navigating currents both literal and symbolic. Horse-drawn wagons hauled supplies, men, and the burden of a nation's expanding will. This moment captures the rugged force of manifest destiny, a mission that carved paths across the West, often at the cost of indigenous homelands and histories. A dry wind sweeps the prairie as the first golden light touches the far-off hills. Steady in his saddle, the cowboy stands as a symbol of the grit that shaped the American frontier. Spurs at his heels, pistol at his side, and rope in hand. He's ready for whatever the land brings. Likely taken in the late 19th century, this photograph captures more than a figure. It holds the quiet strength of a way of life, one that carved itself into the very mythology of the West. Within the Gros Ventre camp on Fort Belknap Reservation in 1906, life moved with quiet strength and purpose. Teepees rose beneath the Montana sky, their painted hides whispering stories of ancestry and spirit. By the fire, a meal is prepared, a dog, as historical records note, while men speak and a child looks on with quiet curiosity. This moment captures a way of life under pressure, yet unbroken. In this circle, we witness culture preserved, adapted, and deeply rooted in sacred land. Beneath the taut canvas of a sunlit tent, the crowd leaned in as the land auction came to life. It was 1904 in California, and settlers gathered with hopes of carving out a place of their own. Each parcel announced stirred whispers, raised hands, and quiet dreams of permanence. Dust hung in the air, thick with ambition and silent competition. That tent sheltered more than just bidders. It held the restless pulse of a nation reaching westward, eager to claim its piece of tomorrow. Winding slowly across the sun-scorched slopes of Navajo Mountain, a handful of explorers led their horses through Utah's harsh terrain. The year was 1909, and they were bound for the mysterious Rainbow Bridge. Slick sandstone and relentless heat turned every step into a challenge. Surrounded by towering canyons, the travelers moved on, tiny against the vast silent backdrop. Their journey wasn't just across land, but into the unknown, chasing awe, where maps ended and wonder began. Winding like a ribbon across the steep slopes of Pikes Peak, the W carriage road tested every hoof and wheel that dared its path. In 1911, carriages crept through Colorado's thin mountain air, navigating sharp switchbacks and bare rock. Each turn was a triumph of perseverance and engineering. This wasn't just a road, it was a vertical challenge etched into stone. Travelers climbed not only for the view, but for the thrill of rising above, driven by wonder and grit. Lying wounded on a bed of straw, John Sontag's body had barely cooled when the men around him posed, guns still in hand. It was September 14th, 1904, the end of a man and of a legend. The posse stood with grim pride, freezing in time a brutal chapter of frontier justice. This photo is more than a record of death. It's a window into the harsh ethos of the fading Old West, where law came swift and mercy rarely followed. Shrouded in dust and shadow, a line of miners emerges slowly from the depths of Virginia City, Nevada, sometime between 1867 and 1888. Their clothes are stained with ore and sweat, their hands pushing heavy carts forward with quiet determination. These men were the silent force behind the silver boom, risking their lives daily to fuel the dreams of an expanding nation. In the dim shaft light, their worn faces tell a story of hardship, strength, and the unyielding pulse of the frontier beneath the ground. Only the groan of the rope and the soft breath of a weary horse disturb the desert's silence. Some 30 miles north of Palomas, Arizona, in 1907, a lone rider drew water from a rough-hewn well. His horse drank quietly nearby, both creatures shaped by the land's harsh demands. In this still moment lies a deeper truth, where water was more precious than gold, and a single bucket pulled from the earth could decide who would live to see another dawn on the unforgiving frontier. With a calm smile and steady posture, Fred W. Loring stands beside his mule in the Arizona wilderness, unaware this would be his final photograph. Captured in 1871, the image reveals a young correspondent driven by purpose, chronicling a land on the edge of change. Just 2 days later, he fell in an Apache ambush. His peaceful expression, now frozen in time, speaks to the courage and risk of those who dared to tell the frontier's story, where every mile forward carried the weight of uncertainty. Dust rose beneath the hooves as 2 men led their animals across the dry Texas landscape in the year 1905. One rolled a barrel of water tied to a horse, while the other steered a wooden cart drawn by a mule, methods common in Old Mexico and the American Southwest. Their ingenuity revealed the daily challenges of frontier life, where every drop of water was hard-earned. Scenes like this speak of quiet resilience, the kind that made survival possible under a blazing sun. With a shovel resting on his shoulder and eyes scanning the horizon, the settler walked the open fields of Guthrie, Oklahoma, in the spring of 1889. Around him, tents dotted the landscape as pioneers rushed to stake their claims during the Oklahoma Land Run. Every step was a risk, a bet on land, survival, and legacy. In these overnight towns, born from dust and desire, dreams were planted in raw soil. Each claimed lot carried the weight of hope for a new life on the American frontier. Beneath the blistering Arizona sun in 1898, men dragged heavy rails across the desert floor, forging a path for a new railroad. These tracks were more than timber and steel. They became the lifelines of expansion, linking the rugged frontier to the nation's core. Each hammer strike rang with determination, carrying the hopes of settlers, merchants, and soldiers chasing speed and connection. Yet behind the promise, the railroad cut deep through traditions and land, leaving a lasting mark in the name of progress. Layered in haunting rows beneath the sky of Dodge City, Kansas, tens of thousands of buffalo hides blanketed the earth in the year 1878. An estimated 40,000 pelts filled this yard, a stark testament to the mass slaughter driven by profit and westward expansion. Each hide marked a life taken, another step toward the brink of extinction. This wasn't just commerce, it was destruction on an ecological and cultural scale. A chilling reminder of what was sacrificed in the name of progress. With wooden facades and hand-painted signs, the dusty street of Corinne, Utah, pulsed with promise in 1869. A jeweler, hardware store, and paint shop stood shoulder to shoulder, framed by makeshift buildings and scattered tools. This was a frontier town on the rise, built fast and fueled by ambition. Every storefront told a story of need and determination. In places like this, civilization wasn't passed down. It was hammered into place, bargained for, and built from scratch, one board at a time.